So John, football is never predictable. So when you returned to Oxford last July, what odds would you have put on yourself being Pompey manager 6 months later?
A couple of million to one, I think, Johnny. I would have laughed at it, to be honest. And not to say I didn't think that I was ready to step into some sort of role like that in a League One head coach role, but I didn't necessarily think that the Portsmouth would be the ones that came knocking. The far more realistic one for me, I thought at the time, was to potentially move through the coaching ranks at Oxford, and Carl was brilliant with me trying to facilitate that. And yeah, when the call came from Portsmouth, it was really out of the blue.
Were you expecting it?
No, I mean, absolutely not. I think the previous change had occurred a couple of weeks prior to me getting the call, and I was just looking at it with interest. I did a check online and to see who were the latest favourites. Had a little scan around Twitter, and I think it was quite an up and down market. There were plenty of candidates that popped up to the top of the list and then disappeared completely. And I was just watching it with a bit of interest until I got the call from Rich, and then everything escalated really quickly from there.
As an aside, you were head of the PFA. How did that come about? Because one would imagine you have to be quite popular amongst your colleagues to be in that role.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but the role at the PFA came about because I was on the board there for a number of years. I think I joined in 2016 just as a player representative, and really enjoyed my work for the union. I thought it was a really good thing to represent, and really enjoyed all the principles and the values that the PFA stood by. And we went through quite a bit of change there over the time that I was there with Gordon Taylor and bringing a new CEO with Maheta Malango. And it was just a really interesting time to be part of that, and gave me a whole different sort of skill set and a whole different view on business and the world. And then by the time that I just came towards the end, I'd been in charge, or I'd been the chair for 18 months, which was another really interesting role, dealing with all the different stakeholders and making some relatively big decisions at the top there. And I think that really stood me in good stead to come into this role.
Certainly being popular among the current players will do you a lot of good. How have you found the last 5 months? Have you been ready for it?
Yeah, I felt ready for a while. I think probably since the start of this season, like I said, when we were talking about what it looked like pre-season coming into the player coach role at Oxford, I still felt I was ready to make the step up. I don't think anything can properly prepare you for what it's like to step into a head coach role. I definitely don't think anything can prepare you for what it's like to step into the head coach role at Portsmouth, because of the size of the club, because of the expectation, and because of everything that goes with it, that I think everybody connected to the football club knows about. And it was just one of those things that I felt that I could deal with, and thankfully I think over the past few months have dealt with quite a few bits and really enjoyed it and really relished it. And I just learned a huge amount from the very first moment I set foot in the building. I've learned an incredible amount, and that's been really important to me. And I think if you speak to the best head coaches and managers out there, even the ones that are coming towards the back end of their careers and have been doing it for 30 and 40 years, they're still learning something new every day. And it's a cliche for a reason. I think it really stands the test of time. There's never a day when I come in and don't come off the back of the training session, and there's never a day where I haven't learned anything. It is eye-opening. And this season, having sort of been thrown in at the deep end and dealing with 23 league games, has clearly taught me a huge amount.
So is there anything you didn't expect to find?
Nothing major. I just think sort of dealing with a few of the day-to-day things with players. My relationship with players really changed overnight. I was in the dressing room as a player coach. I think the players confide in you slightly more, and they're probably a bit more honest and less guarded, because there's less outcome to the conversations when you have those as a coach or as a player, as opposed to when you're the head coach and ultimately you're the one that either selects them or doesn't select them on a Saturday. So I think those conversations are really interesting. I hope that they're really honest and open, but ultimately, sometimes there's, with the outcome of being picked for the team on the Saturday, there's always a bit of something to them. I think just dealing with everything in and around the football club has been the biggest learning curve. I knew what the expectations, the pressures would be at Portsmouth, and really embraced them, and that's part of the reason that I was so excited about taking the role, because I know that here's a club that obviously wants to get out of this league, and if and when they do get out of the league, want to push on to the next level as well. And with that, there's a huge amount of expectation, a huge amount of responsibility, which I sort of fully embrace as well. And that's been really exciting to have been part of over the last 3 months, and then looking forward to the future. I think that gives us a great opportunity.
The last manager in another lifetime was a school teacher. So if you were so, evaluate your last 5 months.
Yeah, I wouldn't give it a grade. Ultimately, we didn't get to where we wanted to get to, which is the playoffs. So that was probably a disappointment for everyone at the club. But in terms of where we were when we came in January and what we were facing, I think quite a bit of upheaval at the football club in a good way. We're just trying to move forwards to what is now I suppose, for want of a better phrase, the new era of Portsmouth, with a sporting director working with a head coach and everything that goes with that. So there were some difficult circumstances, I think, when we came in, and I think the squad were in the run that they were in terms of results, and the most important thing was to pick that up really early, and we managed to do that, and then we managed to build on it from there, and we wanted to focus on performance as well as results, and we got that at times. It wasn't always quite as smooth and always quite as good as we wanted it to be, but those things are going to take time as well. So some real positives on the performance front, some excellent positives on the results front, although just towards the back end we didn't quite manage to turn some of those draws into victories, which again from an evaluation point of view is clearly something that we want to do better, but also we don't think we're that far away, and we're going to make a lot of changes here over the summer, and we think that's very, very positive in terms of where we're going next season. And so just overall, without putting a mark on it, I think a real positive time, and I think that's the most important thing, that we've ended the season well. We know exactly where we need to go, and we know exactly how we have to do it. Doing it in the right way is a difficult thing, but we'll strive to do that, and it gives us a real good platform for next year.
Because you had quite a bit to do when you came in, but so you've won 10, drawn 9, lost 4. And what slightly fell off the radar was you ended 11 matches unbeaten, which must be good. So you slightly overdid it on the draws, and if you turned those draws into 4 wins, you'd have been in the playoffs. Were you ready?
Yeah, I think in terms of that 11 match unbeaten run, it probably, like you say, it's gone under the radar, I think, because it hasn't felt like that, because you wanted to win more of those games, and I think 7 of those were draws. And I think if you really break it down, we feel internally that we should have won 5 of those games at the very least, and there were a couple of them we thought were draws, and that was what we deserved, but there were games in there where we just thought we could have won games, and ultimately if you come away with 10 more points, then yeah, we would be sitting in the playoffs. Now, whether we were ready for that or not, we would have really embraced it, and we would have been working hard this week to make sure that we were ready for those for that 2-legged playoff game, and we always back ourselves within this squad to be able to beat any side on our day, and I think we showed that when we beat Bolton at Fratton Park. I thought we showed that when we had an excellent performance against Sheffield Wednesday, although it ended in a loss. The disappointing time for us, or the disappointing part of those performances and results, I guess, were the 4 losses, because we lost against those sides who we would have been competing with. So we lost against the sides above us in the league: Peterborough, Barnsley, Plymouth, Sheffield Wednesday. But just towards the back end of the season, I felt like we were getting something going, and we'd almost got to a stage where, when we did play sides that were above us in the table away from home, in terms of Derby, we put on a really solid performance and a good performance, and I thought we were well worth the point at the very least, and maybe all 3. So that was really pleasing to have that progress towards the back end of the season. Who knows whether we would have been ready or not? We definitely would have competed like we have done for the entirety of these 23 games, and again, just to finish the season off against the last year's playoff finalists, who have had a strong season and were playoff contenders as well, and to finish off with such positivity gives us a lot of hope for next year.
4 losses though over half a season.
Yeah, and the perfectionist in everybody here in the coaching staff at the football club wants to take those losses away from it, and I think one of the funny things about those 9 draws is that we would have obviously been better off probably winning 5 of them, and we would have been better off. We know that if we won 5 of them and lost 4. So it's one of those interesting things where unbeaten runs are great, but ultimately we have to turn those draws into wins, and that was probably a good part of that record as well, not having lost so many games, and certainly against the sides where we were expected to win, we didn't lose games. A couple of those we just needed to turn into wins as well. So I think all of those statistics indicate that the foundations are there, and that's the really important thing for us. So the foundations are there. We have to work very hard to maintain that standard, and then just break through that, and like I say, really do something next season.
So here is where the pressure ramps up. Come August, it'll be your team, your players, honeymoon over. Do you relish that challenge?
Yeah, and that's the whole point of actually taking this job in the first place, because we knew that the blueprint was there, or not the blueprint, but we had that sort of blank canvas in the summer to start again. And of course we've got players under contract, but those are the players that I think that we want to keep for next season, clearly, and we do think we've got a really good core of a squad, albeit we're quite thin on the ground now in terms of where we are as a squad, but that gives us a massive upside in terms of potential. We've got to get that right. We have to get that recruitment right. And like you say, the pressure is going to be ramped up. In fairness, when I took the role and all the way through, the pressure that we put on ourselves as a coaching staff and as a club has been there throughout. So we've always put ourselves under the most intense pressure, and we don't need to do any more of that because we know that the fans obviously have got their the expectations that they've got as well, quite rightly. And that married together with the expectations of the executive at the club and the ownership means I think it's quite a good environment, really. Nobody's expecting anything other than a really good run next year, and we're going to try and pressure ourselves to do that as well as much as possible. So I think the overall message is yes, we do relish it, and if you don't relish it, it's time to get out of the business, and it's time to get out of football. If you don't relish winning games and the challenge of getting promoted and actually taking this football club somewhere where it hasn't been for a number of years, then like I said, I don't think anybody connected here would have taken the roles in the first place, and everybody's really excited about doing that.
Does it kind of irk you when people still term you as a rookie manager? Because so was Schumacher at Plymouth and McKenna at Ipswich, and they're now both in the Championship. Any reason you can't join them next season?
It doesn't irk me at all. I am a rookie manager, and I didn't have any experience of being a head coach or a manager prior to coming into this role, and we were fully aware of maybe the stigma attached with that when I ended up taking the job at the back end of January, and we knew that was a challenge that we needed to overcome. And I suppose sitting here 3 months into the role now, or 4 months into the role, I don't feel like a rookie manager anymore because of the amount of, we've had half a season and it just feels like I've been here for a couple of years, and I think that's a real positive. And I almost felt like I've dealt with, or I've seen most of the things you're going to see in football. And of course, there's going to be a few more things that pop up over the summer and next year. But ultimately, that's the aim. The two managers and the two head coaches that you've named there, albeit completely different backgrounds and at completely different football clubs, that's the blueprint. I think that what they've done this year is absolutely fantastic, and they've gone on and achieved great things. And of course, for us, hopefully that will be the aim for us next year.
But whether it be Alex Ferguson, Neil Warnock, you had to come from somewhere.
You've always got to come from somewhere, yeah, definitely. And the aim for me is to come from essentially nowhere and establish myself as the Portsmouth head coach in the first instance, and make sure that some of the question marks around my appointment, and the ones that we were fully willing to acknowledge at the start, who the hell is this coming into the role? We justified what the appointment was all about, and it was about us moving forward as a football club, and it was about doing what we want to do in terms of the new model. And hopefully in the fans' eyes we've established that, and they can see where we're going, and they can see the progress on the pitch, and they know that we're fully committed to working on that. And like you say, I think everyone has to come from somewhere. It was an unconventional route into the game, but I don't think there's any blueprint for any coach or manager progressing into this role. I think it just happens in 100 different ways.
So here's the rub. What type of players do you need, and how many of them do you need to turn this team from one not quite good enough to one of the best?
So I think, without getting into the sort of technical detail of what we want position by position, because we'd be here all day, I think there's a certain quality that we want to bring to Portsmouth Football Club, and that is players that play with a huge amount of passion, and a lot of that is in the athleticism that they show, in the desire and the hunger that they show when they pull on the Portsmouth shirt. One of the things that we look at when we're recruiting is how much hunger players have to come and play for Portsmouth. We want players that want to come and play here, and I as a player always thought that would be an absolute given when you come to Pompey. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. So we want players with that desire. We want players that know what it means to be connected with the football club. We want players that know about the history. We want players when they know they look across from the dugout, they know who Jimmy Dickinson is, and the whole history that's connected with the football club, and not just the honour, but everything about the feeling of the city. And I don't have to explain that to the fans at all, but we need players to recognise that. We need players to connect with that. And that, I think, in fairness to the fans throughout my time, is all they've ever asked. They want passion, and they want exciting, front-footed football, and we're going to try and deliver that. It just take a bit of time, and we've got to balance that off with what we think is the best way to win games. But ultimately, we need to bring in a lot of players, all players across the board. How many is a good question. I mean, it's going to be at least 10, I would have thought, because of the amount that we know we've lost out of contract, and,
so almost a new
and
team.
The loans as well. Almost an entire new team. But the positive part for us is that if you look at the core, again, if you look at the core of the group that, say, finished the game on Sunday with a couple of the lads on the bench who are going to be here next year, that makes a pretty solid starting 11. And that's really exciting, that's really promising for us. Now we need to add a lot on top of that. We know there are certain areas that we're short in, and I have conversations with fans and I receive emails, and we know we're on the same wavelength. We know exactly what we need to bring into the football club, and that's the beauty of it. Actually, no one I think isn't aligned. Everybody knows. The people that watch the games are really intelligent, discerning fans, and they can tell what we need. We know what we need is now. Well, one thing we want to do is do it in the right way. We don't want to. We don't want to be a place where people just come and pick up a last paycheck or any paycheck whatsoever. We want people to come here that really want to earn their money, and the profile of player we're going to bring in, age doesn't matter, but the profile of player is players that want to progress and players that are on their way up. And even if it means one of these players has played at a higher level and is coming down to League One, it's players that want to get back up to that level and they want to achieve something. Or those who've got plenty in the dressing room. You've got the likes of Paddy Lane and Riley Towler, who we signed in January, who are desperately young and hungry, and they want to get to the next level and beyond. And that's brilliant to have in the changing room. So anybody that has that hunger and that desire to really improve their own career and then improve the football club, they're exactly the right profile for us.
Explain your working relationship with Richard Hughes, how that works, who has the final say?
Yeah, so, Rich and I work in each other's pockets every single day. We're constantly on the phone, constantly texting. If not, we're sat in the office together or watching games together, and that relationship is really, really important at the football club. There are a wide variety of things that Rich takes responsibility for and makes the final decision on, and vice versa. I think the essence of the relationship is that on anything football, whilst we have a long debate about it and obviously discuss, and we are aligned on almost everything. I think we've been aligned on 99.9% of everything we've spoken about so far, if not 100%. One thing which has always said to me is, look, football-wise, you as the head coach, you've got the final decision, whether that's bringing somebody in or saying no to someone, and that's really refreshing to have, and I think that's the best balance. And I think it works because we don't disagree on too much, and when we do, it's fine, it's respectful, and we go, okay, that's absolutely fine, we'll move on, no problem whatsoever. So our working relationship is, I wouldn't necessarily know how to describe it, except we're just working really, really hard to make sure everything's better here. There are a load of things that Rich takes off my plate, and if you look at traditional managers in football, they had to be completely club-wide on absolutely everything, making decisions that really take away from the football and take away from the focus that the head coach can have out on the training pitch. And it could be something as silly as designing or picking what kitchenware you want for next year. And that happens. I've seen it with managers and I've seen it with head coaches becoming overwhelmed with everything and all of the noise they have to deal with. And that's an extreme, silly example, but that's what happens. There's so much that needs taken care of at a football club, and Rich essentially takes off half of my workload and then says, John, your responsibility is to focus on the football, and we'll build a squad together along with Phil Baldwin, who's the head of recruitment, and alongside Andy Cullen and Tony Brown as well, who are well involved in recruitment alongside the owners. And it's up to us to build that squad. It's up to us to recruit together. It's up to us to say yes collectively on things and to say no collectively on things, and everybody's got a voice, everybody's got a bit of power and a bit of say, but ultimately I think quite rightly, whenever it comes down to the final decision, Rich has always said it's up to you, and that's a really, really positive thing to have.
In this month, in 2008, Pompey won the FA Cup. You might be aware of that day. You were playing for Brentford at the time. Does Pompey's position now, would you ever expect to have seen that day? In fact, would you have ever expected to see Brentford's position that day? And does it emphasise to you how desperate it makes Pompey fans to see some kind of success again?
Yeah, I think it's a really good comparison, even just for the purposes of this. Brentford at the time were in League Two, and now they're a side flying, competing for the top half of the Premier League, and they've dropped off a bit recently, but they certainly were competing for European places. A very, very well-established club now in the Premier League. People don't think of Brentford as a League Two side anymore, like they were in my time. And I think on the flip side, if somebody just said, oh, by the way, in 15 years' time, Portsmouth will be competing in League One rather than winning the FA Cup and competing in the Premier League, then it would have seemed worlds apart. The two clubs would have seemed worlds apart. So part of that is the beauty of football in Brentford's case, and also the the pain of football in Portsmouth's case, and the club have felt a lot of pain over the past 15 years, without a doubt. I think Brentford are now a well-established club in the Premier League. Portsmouth are a well-established club in League One. That's what nobody wants that, and that's great. But the ambition's there. So the ambition is there to get back to those heights. The ambition's there to get back to the heights that we saw 15 years ago. We've got to take it step by step. And first of all, we've got to become a competitive side in League One. And the real message from everybody at the football club, particularly the owners, is that they want to do it in the proper way, which is make sure that at all times Portsmouth never suffers what the football club did suffer in terms of financial problems, and we know we've got that backing, and we've got the security from the owners, and they've been fantastic in doing that, and the club is in safe hands. Granted, I completely know some of the fans want a lot more, but the club's in really safe hands financially. Fratton Park is in a good place. We're looking now at the training ground and redeveloping everything. The transfer fees that we spent in January were both really, really positive. A good amount of money on Paddy Lane and Riley Towler to invest in the future of the football club, to bring players in that are going to make the football club better, and really to provide that financial backing to myself and Rich to go out and compete. And there's one thing that we're sure of, is that we have the tools to be able to go and do that. We've got a lot of work to do, and sometimes these things take a bit of time, but we're definitely doing it in the right way. And every single decision that we all make collectively is in the best interest of the football club, so that one day, and I know what will happen, we do return to those heights. I'm certain of that.
That takes away my final question. You feel everyone is aligned in the same ambition?
It was a really important part of my interview process for the club, I think, to make sure that I was aligned with Rich's vision, with Andy and Tony's vision, and then obviously going higher up the chain with the owner's vision. And they've decided to go down this route of having a sporting director and going for a head coach, and of course that's great for me. I think it's worked out brilliantly well for myself, and I feel a huge amount of responsibility because of that, because people have trusted in my ability and people have given me the honour of leading the football club. Now, the alignment from top to bottom is definitely there. We all know how we want to work, we all know how we want to get there, and I think it's just a case of making sure that we do things properly and we do things right, and we get there in the right way. And like I said, there's no doubt in my mind that the football club will get there, hopefully during the time that I'm here. But everything that is now being put in place, the foundations of a good football club are there, and that is very difficult to see from the outside sometimes. I get it, I'm a football fan and I want instant success. I'm not going to get it because I'm a Spurs fan, but never mind, I can live with that. We live to fight another day. But at Portsmouth, my message to everyone would be it's a very, very exciting time to be connected to the football club, and the future is really bright in everything that we're doing. And I'm sure that we'll be hopefully sitting down in a few years' time and having that conversation where we look back to the summer of 2023 and know that's where it all started.
You're going to get a summer break?
I don't think so. Back when I was a player, I used to be able to come in and have the meetings at the back end of the year and then just switch off for a couple of weeks, maybe think about doing a bit of stretching and a bit of foam rolling, and just maybe plan what your holidays were like, and just think about pre-season. Pre-season was always in the back of your minds, but one thing that is quite exciting about this role as well is that the minute that the season finished, we were able to get on with business and have all the player meetings. Now we're looking in the office there at a completely different squad. We've with all of the loans that have gone back, with the guys that have been released, the guys that have been retained, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to have to do that over the next 6 or 7 weeks leading up into pre-season. But thankfully most of the legwork has been done, because we've been going since February the 1st to try and make sure that it is smooth and it is a transition. So I think part of the job is that you never really get to switch off, and I really love that about it. I don't think my wife does, but we knew what we were getting into, and again I think that's the right thing to do, because we're dedicated and we're obsessed with getting the football club back to where it belongs.
Listen, we wish you well, mate.
Cheers, Johnny. Thank you, mate.